G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talk Stuff, Ukraine War Update for the 9th of March 2026. I know I make mistakes, but I try to correct them. One of them is I have not pointed out enough how much the media acts as if the sun shines out of Zelensky's ass. They have him on such a pedestal. They believe now that he invented drone warfare. What was the What's the Predator drone then? What's the US Global Hawk? What have all this US been doing for the last 20, 30 years? What was all those drone strikes under Obama? No, it's ridiculous. And interceptor drones, remember, their range, very short, and they can only take out other small drones. And as seen in Ukraine war right now, the Ukrainian drone experts can't even stop the drones in Ukraine. So how are they going to stop Iran, who launches far more drones per day than Russia has? Now you know why Russia could not get enough drones out of China or Russia or India. They are all stockpiling drones and they are all the ones who urged, India urged, China urged, they all urged Russia into war. Well, they funneled money into Ukraine to buy up all their little small motor industries, all their fabrication industries. They're China, Russia, not so much. But China and India are profiting off the war in Ukraine. They are both forcing Russia to sell them at discounts, oil. They want the sanctions so they don't have to pay full price. Europe is doing China's bidding and hiding behind Ukraine, of course. Ukraine is doing China's bidding and hiding behind their own little mascot. Everybody seems to be missing the obvious. Where's Ukraine buying all its AK-47 ammunition from? Not Russia. Now, yes, they are slowly getting rid of, phasing out AK-47s and other technology. And yes, they are buying lots of ammunition from Poland as well. I'm not talking about the ammunition. The ammunition and stuff from the US, it looks impressive on paper. But when you look how much Ukraine uses and see no offensives, and see every day, sometimes only minute gains, but still they are gains by Russia. And yet you see the opposite headlines everywhere else, and you just can't think that the propaganda is so... The disconnect from reality is the cognitive dissonance required is Orwellian levels of buffoonery, where you just completely do not question anything. And that is why I can say with confidence, most of the media is misleading. Now, the misleading industrial complex is extending to YouTube, particularly the Telegraph, the Sun, even the Indian Times. They are all enjoying large audiences because people just cannot and will not accept the truth. You're here because you do. You stay because you do. Now, as we look around the battlefront, there are lots of strikes on Sumy, Dnipro, Kharkiv, Odessa. I'm surprised Mykolaiv has been given a day off. Kherson was struck. They strike Kherson almost daily now. there's a march in Lviv. Women's Day march was approved, and it was turned into an anti-war march. And Ukraine authorities stood by and pretty much just didn't let them broadcast. So there were some broadcasts, but they were little staged events by the Ministry of Truth, aka the BBC. So we have a little bit of activity and a little bit of gains here on the front, but not much. Not much at all. It is turning into a quagmire where, Russia will lose territory in one area, gain in another, and while Ukraine struggles to hold it, Russia, again, is deliberately fighting with one arm behind its back. Like, quite literally, Russia has deliberately withheld over 136,000 troops from the front lines. Half its recruits this year will not go to the front. And there are lots of battles going on with no indication of length, who and where and what objectives. I mean, you learn more from black and white reels of World War II. I mean, even in World War II, you have the Russians with newsreels telling you why and where they're going to the front, because by the time they were broadcast, the battle was already raging. But you don't get that anymore. You don't get a detailed... and again, that started with war weariness in Vietnam and news media changing their public opinion. So with Walter Cronkite infamously turning Americans against the Vietnam War for his own personal beliefs and giving you false information because he is not obligated to tell you the truth, except about US politics, apparently. So he can lie about the war in Vietnam, but he can't lie, and yet he did, about Nixon. So, Now, this is often called the frozen front, but it is warm today. Now, Krominska, the Russians are probing. They did make gains in the last week, but since then, even yesterday, it's not that much. But today, yes, they've started attacks on, I think that's Ilovokia, and, well, Prestrock seems to be just a gas station on the road, but, here we have mostly, again, a frozen front. Though Russia is in striking distance of these towns, they've done almost nothing. Again, winter has played a huge role in slowing down this war. But I think so is the weariness and the politics in Russia is such that what is often discussed, you only get the final agreement to make it look like they're all in agreement, to make it look like Putin's still in charge. It's so important to the Russians to have a strong leader that they don't want public disputes. They don't want the sensational back and forths. Most people don't watch Parliament for the very reason it's nothing but, personal spats. Now I'm looking here, and there's a slow advance here, and again, it's slow, but in the grand scheme of things, less casualties for Ukraine, the better. For Ukraine's long-term future, not just Russia's, of course. Russia's going slow for its own benefit, but it benefits Ukraine to have Russia go slow. Now, it's not entirely, there's pressure. If Ukraine backs off anywhere, right, they immediately lose that territory. So they can't back off. They can't organise their front. They have to remain scattered, costing them millions per day, which is why they are constantly, every few days, give me billions, give me billions. Now the Russians are slowly moving here. They are almost at the base of this. It's not really a river. I think it's more a canal or a former river or estuary. I don't know. I did read somewhere that Ukraine is full of these artificial estuaries and others. There were riverways and that, they're just cut off, right? These riverways or estuaries and reservoirs. Yeah. I mean, where's the water go when they fill up? Well, they actually backflow into the main rivers and go down. Yeah. Those rivers backflow and feed down into the rivers, not the other way around. This is the upstream. So, yeah, the water, it's all from the runoff of winter, you see. It looks weird, I know. But, yeah, all these waterways are used by the Ukrainian military. Now, got to remember, I pointed this out several times, Zelensky, this is one of the few rare announcements where he put 15,000 men, without saying how many were there prior, into this area in anticipation of the Russian winter offensive. And sure enough, the winter offensive had reached there, but there's no Ukrainian winter offensive, and Russia's winter offensive is coming to an end. They were once March is over, they will start rotating troops. Well, they're actually rotating all the time, but I mean large rotations. And we'll see whether or not they increase their army. Now, Ukraine apparently has to 870,000. They have another hundreds, between 40 to 100,000, depending on the articles, trading in Poland, Germany, England, Canada. I think a lot of them are, about 200,000 in all, currently in Ukraine are mercenaries. They're not they might be Ukrainian, but they're not Ukrainian citizens, or they are now. So we have very little news on the front. We've still got markers from yesterday on the evacuations, although they are said to be ongoing according to Kiev Independent. So that makes sense. Some of these battles, even though they started days ago, are still ongoing. That's why they haven't been removed. So even if a marker is 2 days old, it still means Russia's shelling or attacking in those areas. And there is quite the exchange going on the Western Front, which if Ukraine relents, they will lose more territory. Ukraine, of course, is lashing out at Donetsk. It's their favourite little whipping boy, and as well as their attacks on Soski and other areas. They also have carried out these successful attacks on Chechnya. And we haven't heard much from the Chechen leader since he appeared at the peace talks. I don't think it was in Geneva. I think it was in Turkey. Well, arguing he went there to stall, delay, or stop the peace talks. But actually, no, he went there to urge the peace talks. See, taking away Zelensky's war takes away Zelensky's purpose in life, takes away his fame, and it will start to eat into his fortune. Now, so there's a lot of drone attacks in the media, and of course they're talking a lot about Iran, but Ukraine has put drones on robots, and according to Vitaly Shenenko, it's the Russia's full-scale invasion, which it's not. Robot wasn't real. Well, it's Ukraine, and well, actually, these puzzle drones, these aren't new. This is the problem. The minute Ukraine has been given pretty much a pedestal to stand on, and the lies that flow from Ukraine just keep coming. You just can't tell people. You try, but they don't want to know. They think the sun rises from Ukraine and goes to bed in Ukraine. And Ukraine is now the centre of Europe. It is the pinnacle of bravery, Yeah, right. We're fighting fascism, Yes. But in reality, you're sacrificing the lives of Ukrainians for your own little indulgences. Now, I believe as drone warfare continues, the electronic warfare, particularly America's electronic warfare, I believe it's starting to make a difference in Ukraine. Russia's slowing down. The Russian drone and missile attacks, they launch hundreds for the same effect. They have to launch more drones for the same effect as prior attacks. And increasingly, they will not say, but I think we are reaching the point of war fatigue on both sides, and they are looking for escape. And it's not, and everybody knows it and won't say it. Zelensky is the problem. And increasingly Putin has spoken to Trump about it. But it's fallen on deaf ears as well, because in part, Trump has got many chainsaws in the air, and like a chainsaw juggler, one cannot stop to say, I hear you. Now, Sweden sees the cargo ship just because it had Russian crew on board. We don't know. The Russians are saying that this is an illegal seizure. Sweden is swinging their dicks saying, ha ha, we got you. But yeah, in reality, it's just another asshole wanting attention, getting it from the media because the media wants attention. And let's be honest, you all want to be filled in on what's going on, so they're giving you, I tried to give you what you want, everybody's trying to give you what you want, but I'm not going to lie for your views. I'm not going to tell you. If Russia starts losing, I'll tell you, right? And technically, Russia is not achieving its goals. That's different. Not the same as losing. That's not the same as winning either. And in life, Japan technically won World War II. It got all its goals achieved. It smashed the old empires, got the European colonial powers out of Asia. It revitalized and modernized Japan as the government wanted. It dragged a lot of people out to rebuild and revitalize Tokyo. But of course, it came at the cost of millions, and even today, they're feeling that cost and regretting it. There is a quiet regret all across Asia. There's a lot of regret for many wars. People today look back and say, our grandparents were nothing but weren't seeking a glorious revolution against an oppressor. They were just seeking glory or gold or doing it for their God. And to many, yes, Karl Marx is their God. But increasingly, as you get even, you only have to go, 3-4 generations away from the war, they don't see the glory. They do not see or feel that those wars were justified. They already saw the British. Most people know today, right, India's little hissy fit rebellion. Nobody should be accepting any Indian migrant. Nobody should be accepting any Arab migrant or African. Now, the interesting part of the Ukraine war, of course, is the financial aspect. But to most, it is the most boring. The Ukrainian mafia runs Ukraine. Zelensky is the representative of Krominsky, who is one of the 9 billionaires who owns most of Ukraine. Nothing in Ukraine gets done without Krominsky. Zelensky's on the phone multiple times a day with Krominsky. Krominsky's hiding in Switzerland because he's wanted. He's a wanted man for money laundering, and again, it is just a formality, right? That I think the warrant was torn up years ago when Zelensky first came to power. Right? Krominsky was wanted by his own government. That's why there was a coup. He went to America and slathered up to. Now Ukraine has agents of influence around the world. Ukraine has been building up this war for decades, lobbying the U.S. government. When they didn't get their way in elections, they lobbied Obama and got a coup. Victoria Nuland and her cohorts, all working with Ukrainian organizations. But Zelensky was issued a threat, and Ursula von der Leyen was forced to respond to tell him to stop making public threats. Yeah, stop making those threats in public. Yeah. Not stop making those threats, period. Or we're punishing you now for making threats, Where's the European unity? Out the window, right? Because her little pet, Zelensky. Now, no one has explained this large sum money transfer. Ukraine has asked for it back, but won't explain what bank. Now, according to intelligence sources that have published, they know which bank. Everybody knows which bank in Austria. They know that every month Ukraine takes out large sums in US dollars and euros, even though those are not currencies traded in Ukraine. Those are not used by the public in Ukraine. Ukraine's finances, no, these and sovereign funds. What are they? Well, Ukraine is drawing down on aid money for what? That is large payments. Why are they going to Ukraine and not, say, Poland or any other country it's trading with? Why aren't they transferring the money by legitimate means? They say, it has to go by road transport. No. Why road transport with no paperwork? International transfers. You and I have to prove ownership. Everybody else has to obey the law. but apparently Ukraine gets free passes. But the European Commission will not delve into these payments. Hungary seems to not release the money, but is under pressure to release the money without getting an explanation for the money, which means these are payoffs. These payment transfers are payoffs. Now, who are they to? Again, I believe it's Russia and India. Otherwise, they would go through legitimate transfers. Maybe some of it is to pay off people in Russia to pay for Ukraine's spy networks. But usually that's done through very secretive banking in the Cayman Islands, not through a publicly traded bank in Austria and transferred over land in the back of cars. Now, Hungary ultimately will release the money. They will get a private talk or an explanation, and they will get their they will get something for their trouble. But this is real. What's it really about is Viktor Orban putting pressure on Ukraine to turn on back its cheap oil. Everybody wants cheap oil out of Russia, but nobody wants to let Russia be Russia. They have to control everything. Okay, it's like the Soviet Union, Europe, the Soviet Union. They're two dogs, on their chains, barking, over the ground between them. But if either one controls the ground between them, they'll still bark on the chain about the ground between them. So they start in the middle, bark, 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 and one will get its chain lengthened, and the other will, have to, scurry around in a smaller yard. But eventually, the dog will get old, and it's a never-ending shit show. War is a never-ending shit show where you only have temporary, at best, victories. Nobody's going to remember Zelensky or anything really much in about 10 years. My fear, of course, is that in 10 years' time, this still is going on. But I think Russia is under pressure, and internally, as not just to bring about an end to this war, but they're realizing they're losing in Iran, and they've been humiliated in Iran. But they've had one of their fourth generation hybrids shot down with ease over Iran. And they realize now that if some F-15s would make a huge difference in Ukraine. If there were more advanced equipment in Ukraine, and I don't doubt Zelensky is sitting there salivating over some of this equipment, but Ukraine can't afford it. Ukraine's mishandled the F-16s. They were told, right, show us what you could do. The F-16s, they should have performed better. They should have, you should have seen news, should have seen more than just a couple of flyovers. No, Ukraine is too secretive. And Russia's going to soon break, I think, the will of, and then I don't know how much they're going to get their way, but it's not going to be much. And I really hope that this time, when that they really end this war. There are so many things going on. But I think Iran is every time you think that one is going to be over, nah, they just replace the dead leader. I mean, how many leaders they've had now? 3 in 3 days? Had now a report, well, reports that they tried, but it does not appear to have been successful, or they killed a deputy. Not every airstrike is going to get its target, but the IRGC, I think they're now, half their strength they started with. So Ukraine has been, Ukrainian drones, again, they're decreasing. The number of long-range strikes Ukraine has promised hasn't been delivered on as well. So there's both sides in this conflict. Ukraine has to give up its war. Viktor Orban, had to give up Hungary's claim to land in Ukraine that was taken off them to join Europe. Now they've been told that Hungary has to eat crow and fund Ukraine's war so they can get their land back, allegedly, claim all of this, allegedly, and get ascended without the proper paperwork, proper investigations and background checks, and proper punishment for the corrupt in Ukraine. That's unacceptable. Poland should find that unacceptable. But because so many in Poland want their little war against Russia, so many in Romania and other countries too. No, it's not just Eastern Europe who suffered under the Soviet Union. You think, all right, they suffered under the Soviet Union, they haven't quite healed. They're carrying a bitter pill against people who are long dead. Killing Putin or getting revenge on Stalin. You don't get revenge on Stalin, right? The best thing you can do with Stalin is record him for the monster he is and be done with communism. But they can't. That's the problem. Once they're done with socialism, communism, once these countries realize that Ukraine is just a bestial tale. No, I'm not against entirely the idea of Ukraine in NATO, but NATO only wants Ukraine for military purposes, not for, they want basically a big playground, and that's wrong. NATO should be done. Europe and the European alliance can't defend a warm cup of piss and refuse to defend itself. Refuse to do the right thing. Time and time again. Time and time again, all they care about is propping up their ridiculous financial system, which is so fundamentally flawed. That's a whole story for another day. But many people know the left have undermined, right? Remember, all these pretty academics who go around marching with their fists in the air, they become bankers and lawyers, okay? The people who screwed the system are the ones who protested against it while they were students. It's a goddamn LARP to them. Now, thank you all for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Please support the channel. You can support me on Ko-Fi, Patreon, buy my books, buy merch. Appreciate each and every one of you. See you in the next video, and bye for now.